Welcome back to the Blueprint to Ultra podcast with your host, Jeff Winchester and Steve Epifano. Thank you, everyone who sent feedback and taken the time to let us know your thoughts about the previous episodes we've released. We are on episode 4 today, and we are just so excited to continue this journey together and to take you along with it as we continue to move forward. So let's get into the show. Our guest today comes from the West Coast. He has 4 kids as well as 1 grandchild. He owns his own business. And as anyone would know, if you own your own business, you have a bigger family, you're kind of busy. But what our guest also has done in over the past 10 years, roughly since 2015, he has run at least 60 races just on Ultra Sign Up alone. So I say at least because we know that Ultra Sign Up is not the end all be all. It doesn't have every race that most runners have done, but it does have a majority of them that we all are familiar with. And so on Ultra Sign Up, you will see that he has raced distances from 50K to 200 miles. And during that time, he has actually just gotten faster with his ultras. And so the list of races, he has run would take too long to go through. But what you're going to learn from today's guest is that age is just a number. And at the young age, I say young age intentionally because he's 1 year younger than me, but at the young age of 51, he is only getting faster and fitter than he was 10 years ago. So if you want to know what it takes to not only finish an ultra, but to also race it, stick around and listen as we get to know our new friend, Mr. Chad Bruce. Chad, welcome to the show.
Yeah, we are so excited to have you here on the show today, man. All right, thanks a lot, guys. I'm glad to be here.
We are stoked to have you. Yeah, definitely. Real excited to have you. Now, you're on the West Coast. I'm on the East Coast. At the time we're recording this, it is 8:30. It's almost 9 o'clock Eastern my time. So I will try not to fall asleep on you both. I am drinking coffee. I'm probably a little overamped at this point, but you both on the West Coast, so you got an early evening, and I just appreciate you both being there and hanging out with us today. But Chad, like we do on all of our shows with all of our guests, before we really get into some of your huge accomplishments and a lot of the races and things that you've done personally, is we love to know how you got started in the sport itself. And so if you could just kind of give us and our listeners a quick overview, really, how did you get into running and how did you get into ultras in the first place?
Yeah, so 2012, I was golfing at the time, as far as a hobby goes. And my brother-in-law is a military guy. And so he talked to me about doing a tough mudder. And so I had friends that did mud runs, like the 3-mile varieties. And I see them and I'm like, well, I'm certainly in good enough shape. I could do a mud run. And then he sent me the link to sign up, and it's 12 miles with like 40 obstacles designed by the British Special Forces and electrocution. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So I was like, I better, well, I could either, die, quit, like not do it or start training. And so I didn't want to tell him no because it was, the reason to do it was for the Wounded Warriors. So I started training. I had some, it was about, I think we had about 9 months, 10 months. I had a few friends that did some mud runs and ran a little bit. And so I just started my first run since high school football, so it was just more discipline running. If we did bad, we had to run laps or something. But yeah, so I did, it's out here, it's called the Claremont Loop. It was 5-mile loop. And that was my first kind of walk, jog, in the hills with about 1,000 feet of gain with my buddies. And yeah, I fell in love with running. So we did quite a few like Spartan races and things like that to get ready for the Tough Mudder. And like I said, I fell in love with running. So after that, started doing some half marathons with, we did Spartans for at least a few years. And yeah, half marathon, ran a marathon. And I hurt so bad after the marathon, I said, I'm never doing that again. And then shortly after that, probably I ran about 3 more. And then it was funny. I was at a bookstore, like a Barnes and Noble type of thing. And I saw Ultra Running Magazine and I just picked it up and I was like, what the heck's this? And it was on the cover was, I think it was AC 100 was the cover. And I grew up in Wrightwood for about, I don't know, about 5 years. I went there all the way through 3rd grade. And I saw AC 100, like 100 miles. Oh my gosh. I'd never even heard of it. And, but I had some friends that were running a race out here called the Bulldog 50K. And so I saw an advertisement for the Bulldog. So I texted a friend of mine, Tim Cristoni, and I said, hey, do you think I could do this? And he's like, heck yeah, man, you can do it. So I signed up right in the bookstore. And that was my first Ultra sign up purchase, was right in the bookstore. That's kind of how it all. That's how the snowball started.
I think it's so funny that Spartans are like this entryway into ultras. I mean, I've seen so many people jump from like Tough Mudders to Spartans right into ultras. There must be something about it. I mean, Jeff, that's kind of how you got started into ultras was through Spartans. I know you did those for a couple years before you got into ultras. It's really interesting to see that personality type that goes from the Spartans to the ultras.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
for me, it's I did Spartans for about 2 or 3 years before I got into ultras and everything, and, it's because I hated doing all the freaking burpees, and I was really bad, and so right, so when I was back
Totally.
right, so when we were doing Spartans and everything, that's when burpees were required. I think now they've evolved to where they don't even make it required anymore for participants
Oh,
and stuff, and so it was like but, the last
awesome.
Spartan race I did, I failed so many obstacles. I did 270 burpees in the race, and I
Oh,
thought, "I will never do this again. I'll just try to run." And so that's how I got into ultra running itself. That was part of it. I started then training for marathons. But, that's a really cool story. So you were literally in a bookstore when you decided to sign up for your first 50K.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'd done a marathon and their 50K was 31 miles. So I thought it can't be that much harder, but I still wanted to get some reassurance from a friend that ran trail ultras because at that point, I think I'd only done a trail marathon out here in Agura Hills.
So, you said your first marathon was absolutely horrible, though, and, I mean, the pain was just terrible. What was your first experience with the, 50K then? Was it just as difficult, or did you find that, less painful than the marathon?
More painful for sure. My legs hurt. I really, we were running. So the Bulldog race is a 2 lap race where you climb up the top of the hills in the Santa Monica Mountains, and then you run down. So it's kind of a loop up a hill and then back down. And you do it twice. But when we were coming down on the second lap, my back and my midsection was just killing me. And I was running with a friend, and I was like, dude, I got to start working out because this isn't working. I mean, we were jogging, but I could just feel my lower. I was just done. And so when we finished, my legs hurt really bad, of course, and we parked to save a little money on parking. We parked down the street about a half mile or so outside of Malibu State Park, and so we had to walk all the way out there. Him and I were just it was gosh, I don't know how long it took, but it was pretty sad. But
It's one hell of a 50K to be your first 50K too. The Bulldog is a tough one.
yeah, really hot. The second lap's gnarly, and I think 5,000 ish feet of climbing.
That's a
But it
lot of
was
climbing for 50K.
Yeah, you see a pattern on my races. I'm not the smartest guy with picking first races all the way through. My first 50 mile was Ray Miller 50, which has over 10,000 feet of gain. My first 100K was the Chimera 100K, which is it's not a race that's around anymore, but it's pretty famous about being kind of wicked, evil. And then I ran Angeles Crest 100 for my first 100. And
Well
even with the 200, my first 200 was Bigfoot. So it's like kind of the hardest race all the way through, but
well,
good
so
challenge.
when I looked at your background, the information you sent us before the show, we sent you a few questions. You emailed us back and gave us some information, which is our basis and our groundwork, which we then start doing a little bit of trolling to kind of do as much research as we can before we kind of hang out with you, right? But one of the things you said that got our attention, it's somewhat contradictory though of the fact you jumped into this, Bulldog 50K from the bookstore. You just like called a friend and did it. But
Mhm.
what you did for all your other races before you made the jump from the 50K to the 50 miler, you actually had to run multiple 50Ks before you felt comfortable doing it. And then before you
Yep.
jumped up to the 100K and the other distances, I think you wrote that you ran 5 50Ks before your first 50 miler and 5 50 milers before your first 100, right? And so
Mhm.
that's a different personality than one of the books where it's like, let's just give it a whirl like this. We're going to do it. What
Yeah.
for you? Why was it important to you? Because let me pause my question a second. A lot of listeners, we get asked, do I need to kind of build up to the 100-mile race? Do I need to build up to a 200 mile? Like, do I need to do this? And the advice for that is different depending on the runner, depending on their base mileage and all that kind of stuff. But
Mhm.
everybody's different. Like I've talked to people who've gone and their first ultra was a 100-mile race. Why for you was it important to actually have this foundation at each of these levels before going to the next distance?
I just like being ready for what I'm gonna do.
Mhm.
And with the 50K distance, which I think I wrote in my note to you that I was getting sick after all of them. So I was like, I'm not moving up until I can finish one without getting sick. And so it took me that long to get 2 done where I felt pretty good enough to go up to the 50 mile. Cause you know how it is when you're on a 50K, you're like, gosh, 50 miles, like, how can I do that? You know,
Right.
and the cutoffs on 50 miles are hard. Like Ray Miller and even the Avalon 50 was supposed to be my first 50 mile, and it's a 12-hour cutoff. And so I don't know I can't remember what Ray Miller was, but I know it's got a hard cutoff at mile 31 that cuts off a lot of good runners. Like you cannot be a back of the packer and do that race because the 31 mile is over the biggest climb in the race. You have to climb over what's called Boney Mountain, you know, so it's just tight cutoffs. But yeah, I just want to be ready. So once I did that, then 50 mile, I was pretty good with the 50. I ran 250s back to back. Like I think they were back to back months. The
Mhm.
Ray Miller 50 in December, and then the Avalon 50. And I think I finished Avalon in like 10:47 or something like that. So, but yeah, and the longer the distances went, I didn't really get sick. So I was good. It was just the pace of you know, you kind of go out in your 50K like a marathon and then you just suffer the last half to get it in and all that. But yeah, and then that's what I did because it's just the distances are so daunting and you just I want to make sure I'm ready to go before I did it. And even I signed up for the Angeles Crest 100, and back then they had the lottery to where I had a full year, so I wanted to get a really hard 100K under my belt before I did that. Because when I signed up, when I got in through the lottery, I was like, oh my gosh, like can I even do this race? Like, because you know it's just wicked hard, and you hear all the stories about the heat and everything. So I have gotten sick in a few races, but that race I got sick, the Angeles Crest 100, because the heat got me.
So
Um,
can you just before we jump over, because we're going to talk about
mhm.
your AC 100 in 2018 and in 2024. That's actually we're going to get to that in just a minute because for us it's a fascinating story when we look at both those races and your experiences there. But before we do, you mentioned just a few minutes ago that in your 50Ks you didn't want to move up to the 50 milers because you were getting sick, and you actually mentioned even in the AC 100 about getting sick. What's making you sick? Is it a food thing? Is it a heat thing? Is like what is it that's causing the sickness, or have you not learned that? I feel like you
Yeah,
probably have.
no, yeah, I have for sure. With the 50Ks, I was just starting, so it was just you're taking marathon nutrition into it, and I mean nowadays, which we can talk about later, but I've had the sweat test done and
Mhm.
all that, but yeah, just not hydrating enough, so your system shuts down, and then you start puking because your body doesn't want to digest food. So that kind of thing, you know, with every race, you would tweak and change nutrition companies or whatever works, right? And so yeah, finding a hydration mix was key because I was taking some and it just would bloat me or make me sick. And so when I finally found a hydration company that I could drink through 50 or whatever 50K 50 mile,
Mhm.
that was kind of the biggest step because then you're getting calories, liquid calories, so you can make it through, and then you know supplement with the food at the tables and your gels and things like that.
What do you think your like your go-to nutrition is in terms of gels or fluid and everything like that too? Because I mean that's really important. I know you may not be on their team or like sponsored or anything like that. It's just what you use. So what do you use for your fluid nutrition when you're out there on a hard race?
So yeah, Fluid Nutrition, it's a local company out of I think Santa Barbara area. But yeah, they have their fresh citrus and their blueberry pomegranate. It's pretty subtle. It's not real sweet. But I did Spring Energy for a while, but I think that's one of the best things that happened, to be honest, was there a little controversy that happened because then I started just buying stuff at the feed and I just bought a ton of different things, precision, gels, trail butter, and for which I'm sure we'll get into later, but the variety is really key to
Mhm.
me. So now it's kind of like a bunch of different things. I got a whole quiver of things I can eat.
Just want to kind of summarize what you said. To me, it's important, I think, for those who are newer to the sport, when they first experience like hydration issues or sickness, if we will, because they may
Hmm.
actually just call it sickness. I just feel like crap, right? You can DNF or you can finish, but in both situations, you should always look back at that experience and say, what could I do differently? You don't always have to suffer. You don't always have to be sick, right? You
For
don't
sure.
always have to have that. And I think the more, not if, the longer you're in the sport and the more races you participate in, the more you kind of add to your experience toolbox of things that you know you can tweak. And I think what you're saying is by building up like you did, it allowed you to learn and continue to feel more confident, but also to kind of fine tune some nutrition, hydration things to where you would feel more comfortable taking on that next distance. Because, like you said, We're doing a
Mhm.
50K and we're running it as hard as we can, or we feel like we're running as hard as we can. We can't imagine running a 50 miler because of how much pain we're in an hour after we finish that 50K. Like it just seems
Mhm.
impossible. So I
Yeah.
think it's great. Um,
Mhm.
so I mentioned at the start that you have a very, very long ultra sign up, resume. You've got over 60 races there alone just on that website.
Mhm.
But 2024 to me is this year we're in now. It is incredible. Like when you look
Mhm.
at 2024 versus everything else you've done, which you've done Western States, you've done the Bigfoot 200. I think you did the Tahoe 200. You've experienced a lot of these big races out there. Um, 24 though, you did. We're going to just kind of say the race you did, and we're going to talk about them. You did the Cocodona 200,
Jeff, it's a 250. It's a Coconut 250.
250. Excuse me. I don't want to shaft anybody here who needs that two extra 50 miles. Right. I know. Sorry about that. Everybody who's listening is like, I can't believe he just called
251.
it. Right? Called it the Cocodona 200. Air Viper's going to even shoot me. Right. Everybody did the Cocodona 250 in May. You did the Angeles Crest 100 in August and the Javelina 100 in October. Any one of those races for a lot of folks is considered an A race. Right. For you, how did you approach the year? Like I said, we're going to talk about each of them in a minute. But when you looked at the year and you scheduled all three of these on your calendar, was one more important than the other?
No, I mean, obviously one at a time, because to me, I signed up for him, but if I'm injured, I won't do it. If my body doesn't feel good, I'm not going to do it. So yeah, so just one at a time. Cocodona was obviously the big one, and that training was amazing. I've been with Jeff Browning for 3 years. I was with Matt Daniels for 3 years, starting in 2020 through 2022, and then I went to Jeff, or yeah, started with Jeff. So basically, it's just been 3 years, or at this point of Cocodona, it'd be just over 2 years of hard training. Doing all of his workouts and everything that he puts me through. I signed up with him because I don't work out at all. Before this, I just don't like to work out, and so I like to run. But I knew if I was paying him to do it, I would work out. I would, and I've grown to love it. But to be honest, it took a good 6, 7 months before I noticed a benefit to any of it. I was running. I ran Avalon when I first started with him, and my legs felt heavy because I just started working out. And then it was about 6 months later, I ran a race, and I was running uphill a lot more than I'd ever done before in previous races. And I was like, it's working. Like, okay, like now I'm noticing a difference, and so that got me excited. So yeah, so fast forward, I was training a lot with Jake Jackson, which I don't,
Yeah.
you may know him. He's a
Hmm.
USA team member. He's really fast. So
He
if he
is.
ran his, if he ran his race pace, I'm done. But we're good buddies. And so we were both training for Cocodona 250. He had never done one. So we hooked up for months training together. And then I got to run the training run with, that was organized. I ran it with Jeff Browning, Arlen Glick, and Jake Jackson. And so I was just hoping to hang with him for a little while. So we hit the first aid station at like mile 8 or so. And oh, this is cool. Like 8, I'm filming it with my GoPro for YouTube, and I'm like, sweet. And then by the time we got to mile 20, we're having so much fun. And I didn't feel like I was pushing too hard. And I'm like, but you have to climb Lane Mountain. And so I'm like, I'm going to burn the house down to stay with these guys. And thankfully, I'm sure we made good time to Crown King. I mean, they said they didn't want to run it much faster in the race. Um, but yeah, so we made it to Crown King and had burgers together. And Jake and I spent the whole weekend out there together. So we trained on the course quite a bit. And yeah, I mean, I'd never had training like that going into the race. And, on day one of Cocodona, I was with Ashley Paulson.
Mhm.
So I ran a bunch of miles with her on the first day. Um, yeah, I had a great race. So I had never done a 200 and had a good race. Like Bigfoot that was my first one. And that was I always say, like, I left part of my soul up in Washington. That race owned me badly. I finished it in about 97 hours, I think. So not too bad. I mean, I was like above mid pack, but
Yeah.
it just owned me. And then at Tahoe, I was having a pretty good race at Tahoe, but the guy I was running with on the last day, we'd been together for like 100 plus miles, and he lost his mind with about 10 miles to go. And so that was a really bad situation, really scary, because he didn't know who I was. He thought the race was over. He wanted his car, and he was in bad shape. And it was, we finished at like 4 in the morning. So it was horrible. It was one of the gnarliest things I'd been through. So I haven't had a good 200 up to this point, and it was really quite a breakthrough race for me. You know, I finished ahead of. I mean, Jake had a tough race. Ashley Paulson had a tough race, but I still finished ahead of him. So I'm like, I'll take it. I was the first 50-year-old that was not a professional runner, so I got fourth age group.
I mean, that's an incredible performance at Cocodona. I was a little bit behind you guys. You were way out in front. You know, I didn't really run as much as you guys did, but yeah, I didn't finish in the top 10 at all. So, but yeah, I kept moving. It's the most important part. But yeah, that's an incredible performance on like a tough race that you did.
Dude, it's rough out there, man. From Mingus beyond Jerome was awful. I mean, all I wanted to do, I didn't care about my pace. It was just save my feet. Like, I don't care how slow I go. Do not destroy my feet. And so it worked. I mean, when I left, I was so motivated when I got to I forget the name of it. Uh, it was like the third aid station. It's a big aid station, Squirrel Nut Butter aid station. I ran into that feeling great. I forget the name of it now, but basically there's three aid stations. Fort Tuthill. So I ran to the Tuthill, and when I left the aid station before that, like at 3:30 in the morning, and it was freezing. I was by myself, and I'm like, this is awful. But I'm like, I want to break 90 hours. Like I wanted to sleep in a hotel that night, and so I'm like, I got to run. And so I just prayed, and I'm gonna start running, and I just ran, and I ran into Fort Tuttle. I saw a buddy he surprised me being there, Alex, and that fired me up. And I told the guys, I didn't have a crew. Peter, a friend of mine, he wasn't crewing me. I was solo, but then at Whiskey Row, he just like, you know what, I'm gonna crew you. Like, you need help. And so, but I told him going to the last Walnut Creek, I think it is, the last crewable aid station. I told him it's not going to be 6 hours; it's going to be 4 hours. So I'm hauling. I was in. I don't. I go into attack mode at the end of races. If I can get to like towards the end and I'm feeling good, I'm very competitive, and so um, yeah. So I went into attack mode, and I got there, and Peter was going to pace me the last part, and he wasn't even ready. And I'm like, dude, you got like 2 minutes. We're getting at it, and he made it. Yeah, he made it, and we ran hard, man. We to the finish, and it was a breakthrough moment for me because I'd never really finished 200 well, and then to run the last 50 miles that hard, I was really stoked. So that kind of led to what happened the rest of this year.
So before we move on, obviously you've talked to Jake and told Jake that you beat him, right?
Oh, we were in the medical tent together after the race. He came in, I'm thinking like a half hour later, and I didn't even know he was behind me because I'd been around his crew a lot, but apparently I passed him at Walnut Creek when he was sleeping. And so I had no idea, but my buddy Kevin Goldberg came to visit me at the finish, and he goes, Jake's coming in still, right? And I'm like, what? I'm like, I beat Jake. He's like, yeah, dude. I'm like, oh my gosh, and Jake he had a lot of hard time with his breathing, like a lot of people out there.
Hey, no, don't even give Jake all that. We just gotta like let him know that you beat him. Like, it's gonna be good. You trained with him. You trained with Jeff Brownie. You trained with Aaron Glick. Like,
dude,
it doesn't make sense, but there you did. It's insane just to think about. Like, if you even looked at 10 years ago, you just got into the sport, and now you have got a training session with him, and you decided to balls to the wall hang with him the entire time because you wanted to, which is incredible.
yeah,
but you mentioned that you push really hard in the last 50 miles and that you go into this attack mode and everything. Have you always done that, or is it something that is more recent, like this learning to finish strong? Like, where does that come from, and how do you flip that switch? Because most people are pacing as long as they can just to hold on. So how do you flip the switch to do that?
I think working with Jeff Brownie, he talks a lot about the mentality of negative splitting races. So you go out slow enough so you can run really hard at the end. And so that just kind of gets you into a good position for the first half of the race, not to kill yourself, because you want a negative split. So if you can save yourself for like 15 miles of a 50K, and then just run like to keep the same pace to the finish, like have a very even split. It's just mentally, it's a good thought, and it saves you, because I used to just go out hard and just kill myself, and now I don't do that at all. And there's no race, and I don't worry about anybody I'm around, or you know what I mean. I'm just going to run my race for the first batch. I tend to pick a couple people as they pass me early in races. They might be wearing something flashy, or I'm like, "Oh, I'll catch him around mile 20." Just kind of pinpoint a few people. Um, it's great to pass people the second half of races, and it really makes you feel better mentally,
Mhm.
when you're not getting just passed because you're zombie walking, which I've done that a bunch too. But yeah, just like that, working with Jeff. And so there was Katie Asmith was on Billy Yang's pod,
Mhm.
and he let it slide, but she talked about, like, talking to a friend and learning how to close. Like, a friend told her, you need to close harder. And he didn't press her on it, but I did. I reached out to her, an instant message, and I'm like, what do you mean by that? Like, and so she explained what it means. And Jeff, same thing too, working with him. I talked to him about it, and he talks about it being like the warrior inside you has
Mhm.
to come out, and you have to find that, like, somehow, whatever gets it done mentally. And so that's what I've been working on, is going out, running a very smart first half of the race, and then just digging in, and just don't let the pain slow you down, and just try and have that negative split mentality, and keep trucking.
I love that mentality of trying to go in and negative split these races. Sometimes they happen on accident because you're behind a cutoff or something. But just to go into that race thinking and knowing anything that's over like 100 miles where you're going to negative split it is incredible. For our listeners, is there anything that you have done differently between when you first started and now, to be able to carry that over into the second half of the race? Have you added anything into your regimen? Are you higher volume, or are you adding in something tactically besides running, that helps you out when you go into these latter half of these races that you think has helped you improve that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a huge fan of the strength mobility workouts. So I do those 3 times a week. So usually at least an hour, 20 minutes. And yeah, so I'm doing squats, and I don't even know the names of everything, pigeon pose, and different yoga things to stretch. Um, but a lot of there's a tough 21 workout where I have like 20-pound weights, and there's squats involved. It's kind of like doing burpees almost. You're down on the ground for one thing, and then you're back up. 45 seconds of workout, 15 seconds to get into position, and just doing that consistently over time. It's not. I mean, 20 minutes. It doesn't take that long
Mhm.
to do it. But man, the benefits are huge. I had Achilles tendinopathy for quite a long time, and I still struggle. They still tighten up a little bit after long runs, but Jeff and I have been able to work through that. So basically, the first year with Jeff was just working out my Achilles tendinopathy. So, I had a big electrolyte issue when I joined on with him. I used to wake up probably 3 times a night with jump out of bed with calf cramps, and so he was like, "Dude, your electrolytes are off,"
Right.
So he put me on a electrolyte drink that I take 2 to 3 times a day, depending on how much I'm training. I got my sweat test done where I ran different time for an hour, and weighed myself, and then I got the scientific sweat test done. So when I first got with him, my first 50K I ran, we kept track of everything, and I was taking in like 650 milligrams of sodium per liter, and my sweat test is 1347. So I'm not even getting half of the electrolytes I need. And so now that's been a big
Mhm.
help as well.
So
So
let's.
and I'm not sure. Hopefully that answers your question, but
Uh,
yeah, strength mobility workouts.
no, it does. We have a variety of areas we want to go into, and we want to talk about the sweat test too, because you mentioned it in your email too,
Mhm,
and we think it has played a huge role in your success, like you just acknowledged as well. And we think it actually plays a role in a lot of runner success when they
mhm,
begin to fine tune some of their understanding of what their sodium needs are, if you will. Um,
mhm,
So to your point, a sweat test, there's two things, right? You did a sweat test to figure out the volume of sweat you lost, and then you also
mhm,
did a sodium loss or a salt loss test to determine the amount of salt you lose per volume of sweat, right?
mhm.
And that's how you determine the amount of milligrams of sodium that you need. I think you said is 1,300 plus milligrams of
Yeah.
sodium. And And most people need to get anywhere between 800 and 1200. So you have a higher salt loss than
Hmm.
a majority. You're a little bit more on the other side. Some
Hmm.
people are even further out, and some people are a little bit less. But a lot of people that are trying to figure this out are definitely under salting themselves, if you
Yeah.
will, right?
Yep.
And we know that. And so most people are at least should start getting more. The problem is that if they don't get an accurate salt loss test, not a sweat test, but a salt loss test like
Hmm.
you did, then they
Yep.
may just be spitting in the wind and not really getting a good read. And they could over salt themselves, or they could still be underperforming either way. So we do
Yep.
recommend that somebody gets it done. You can go, oh, well, let me ask you, where did you get yours done? Because I got mine done by Precision Hydration by one of the little tests they do. Where did you get yours?
Yeah, it was a precision hydration guy. It was in Laguna Beach, but now he's moved to Colorado. So there is a guy in San Diego that does it.
Hmm.
So it's just, yeah, you can figure it out. I mean, I'm sure Precision Hydration probably has a list of them.
They
I know
do.
Jeff has a list of guys as well where you can go.
Yeah. So those who are listening who are interested in it, you can go on to Precision Hydration's website. They will give you different locations across the United States that perform the salt loss test. And you can find out a place that's near you. I had to drive 2 hours to get mine done. I did mine about a year and a half ago. And mine is a little over, it's around 1180 milligrams of sodium is what I need. And so
Mhm.
it took me forever just to get used to doing at least 1,000 milligrams to where I was like, oh, this is normal. And like you, I take my salt drink, if you will, twice a day, even now. And it's
Mhm.
just part of my daily hydration. That has nothing to do with my training hydration. It's just
Yep.
part of it. Um,
Mhm.
and it has been a game changer in how I actually just feel in
Mhm.
general too. So
Yeah, part of that too is by getting it done and getting my electrolytes balanced is overuse injuries. I used to get a lot of overuse injuries to where I was getting ART done 3 times a year, and now that I've got that, I've been healthy for at least a couple of years straight. So you're able to keep your training going, consistency, no injuries, confidence, all that stuff. 'Cause your chain when your electrolytes are when you're low on electrolytes, your chain is gonna be tight, and so Achilles tendons flare up. Jeff, when he got with me, he said, "90% chance your Achilles tendinopathy is your electrolyte problem, not speed work and that kinda thing." So, because everything, your chain like I said, your chain's tight, and so you're gonna have problems with calf flare-ups and I've learned so many things about my body because the plantar is flared up or the piriformis is flared up and it's clamping down on my sciatic nerve. It's like I didn't know anything about these tendons and all, but yeah, it's been huge for me, for sure.
Think nutrition and hydration, along with electrolytes, is like one of the hardest things for new runners and seasoned runners to kind of understand. It takes a while for people to kind of get that. I think there's a whole population of runners out there that are really undersalted, for the most part, for lack of a better term, where they're not getting enough of that sodium or electrolytes in during any of their races, especially when it's really hot.
Mhm.
And once you get that sodium and electrolyte intake taken care of, I think it allows people to eat a little bit better, because that's really where you get a lot of that nausea. You don't want to eat because you're under sodium. You don't have enough salt in your system, so you're not able to digest anything. So that's when those waves of nausea come on. But once you can get that electrolytes and that sodium dialed in, I think that's really important for a lot of runners to kind of understand.
Absolutely. Yeah, with the hydration, Jeff, as soon as I got with him, he says, "I want you drinking way more than you think you need." And Jeff has me training like I'm training like I'm racing all the time because taking calories, hydrating well, you're going to recover better for tomorrow's run. If I'm 10 minutes out and I time for a gel, I take a gel if I'm almost in my truck. And, to me, it's part of recovery. You're feeling well, all those things.
yeah, so I want to switch because that is the other half. So it is the sweat rate also tells you your volume of water loss that you need to kind of also work on trying to replace to a certain
Hmm.
degree, right? So what is your overall like
Hmm.
when during the summertime in the hotter parts of the summer, you do a sweat test. I'm sure Jeff has you doing a sweat test at different times of the year to kind of determine temperature wise what you should be,
Hmm.
consuming. What is your volume of fluid intake that you're trying to do during the summer?
I don't remember the numbers, but I know that I'm a light sweater, so I don't sweat a lot, but I'm a real salty sweater. Jeff and I have the same rate, and I know I lost, the last time I did a test, I lost like 1.5 pounds in an hour run, and
That's not
and,
a lot.
no, yeah, Jeff said, "I don't sweat, like, when I run, like, my friends are soaking and I don't sweat much." So, I know that, but I do have salt, like, all over my arms when I'm done with, like, a race and things like that. So, it makes sense, and
Mhm.
all my problems with overuse injuries, because it was just one after the other back when I was before Jeff, and, so for sure, all that really dialed it in.
Yeah, so, like, for me during the summertime, I'm looking at trying to get 32 to 36 fluid ounces,
Mm.
per hour, which is a ton.
Yeah, so you're a heavy sweater
Yeah.
and a fairly heavy salt sweater
Right,
too.
and so I'm constantly drinking, and so like you, I'm having to
Mhm,
get used to if I go out for an hour run, not just because I can go for an hour without having to try to carry something, typically, I still carry something because I wanna just stay on top of it, without going into a depletion after the fact unnecessarily.
mhm.
So,
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
before we go, back to the, other races and stuff, you mentioned the inner warrior and everything,
Mhm,
and negative splitting. And the reason I want to kind of talk about it again is because it's very hard to do. Like
mhm.
it's so hard for most ultra runners to accomplish. If what you're saying is true, then at mile 80, I need to be turning it up, not trying to survive. Right. So I know you said you tap into this inner warrior that you and Jeff have talked about too, and you
Mhm.
focus on attacking and stuff. But do you do that in training also so that you can do that in a race?
I like doing race simulations. So 5 weeks out, usually if like Cocodona, a friend and I did a very hard route. It was almost 50 miles and we climbed up and over Mount Wilson a few times. I can't remember how much vertical gain it was, but we were like 49 miles and it had to be like 15, 16,000 feet of gain, I'm sure. But yeah, so when you're doing that, you're doing a race simulation. You know, we were pacing that way. We were running the downs, grinding. When you have to, and we saved the last climb up to Mount Wilson for the very end. So instead of, we kind of went around the front side of the mountain and then back up and over. And that was like that Mount Wilson's hard from the front side, from the south side. And so we had to climb all the way back to the top before we went straight back down what we climbed to our car to finish. And we started that run at 8 or 9 at night. So, yeah, so, I mean, I like 50K or 100K. I like to go out and do a race simulation. Sometimes it's with a buddy that's equal. Sometimes it's by myself. You know, I'll just go find a track that's similar to what I'm gonna race, and I just go for it, full kit. Usually, I'll even wear the gear I'm planning on wearing for the race. For sure the pack, but even the shorts and the shoes and everything, just do a full race simulation, and I think it's a great way to go.
So you get into the actual mindset of the race and everything then. Like you're full on gearing up and trying to look how you are planning on how you're going to look that morning and everything, which is
Mhm.
definitely putting on a race
Yeah.
simulation. Okay, cool.
Yeah, and even AC 100, we did all the training runs. We ran pretty much the whole course, and
Mm.
I like to run with faster guys, and so that way you got to kind of hold. We definitely ran all those sections faster than I ran them in the race, but it's a great confidence booster running all the sections pretty fast.
Yeah, I did the same thing. I love Mount Wilson. Um, I did kind of a race simulation, probably not as fast as your guys' race simulation was, but I had the full pack and everything. I just trotted up and then cruised on the way down. There's like 5,000 feet of gain, almost 6,000 feet of gain, I think, in about 7 miles up. So works out really well. And one of the times I did it, I did a double summit, so that helped out a lot. So I can't speak enough to using things around you to have like a race simulation type thing where you don't have to go out and race it, but at least get that feeling of the stuff you're going to be wearing, the clothes, the pack, most importantly, because a lot of that times you'll be running with a lot heavier pack than you would during training when you're racing.
Yeah, I mean that's we weren't moving. I mean we had a heavy pack on, so it was pretty much unsupported except for a couple water stops at Mount Wilson, and yeah, so you're just going whatever. I mean, we had our poles and hiking it, but we were running down the hill and things like that, but nothing crazy. Just trying to keep it, Cocodona paces, you just gotta keep plugging along, keep the heart rate low and but that's part of it too, is doing speed work. Yeah, I mean, I would do speed work. Usually I do kind of like a speed week and then a heavy week, like heavy pack week where you're hiking a lot more. And because Coconut, there's so much running out there, as with a lot of the 200s, maybe not Bigfoot, but most of the hundreds or 200s, there's a lot of running out there. So it's like if you can get faster, then your easy miles are that much faster.
Mm.
It might be 30 seconds or a minute per mile faster with the same heart rate after a training block. So, yeah.
So just to close this out, you got 39th place overall at Coconut 250 this year, 4th place in your age group, 50 to 59-year-olds.
Mhm.
That's what I like to hear, man. It's just incredible to
Yeah.
me. I have mad respect for you on that. Like, that's super
Thanks.
impressive to me. Yeah.
Thank you.
Because I'm a year older than you and I'm a crap ton slower than you. But it is super impressive. And I mean, yeah, literally, man, it's impressive to me. And I started running in 2015. I had not had any kind of running background at all. And so to see what you've done is just mind boggling to me. A
Thanks.
lot of respect. Um, and and I think to me, what's really the icing on the cake is the AC 100, the Angeles Crest 100, because in 2018, I'm looking at my notes because I don't want to screw this
Yeah.
up.
No, it's okay.
In 2018, at the age of 45, right, you ran this race, the 100 miles in 31 hours and 47 minutes. It's a hard race, and that's a
It's a
great
real
time.
hard
Yeah,
race.
like a lot of people would listen and think, I want that. Like if I finish the AC 100 in that time, awesome. So that was your
Mhm.
first time running, and most people are going to run a 100 mile. And maybe they'll find a race they're going to run it a few more times, and they're going to get a little bit faster and stuff. You
Mhm.
ran the same race in 2024 at the age of 51, and you ran it in 24 hours and 57 minutes. You cut 7 hours, well, 6 hours and 50 minutes. I'm going to call it 7 hours off of a 100-mile race, 6 years older, but
Mhm.
7 hours faster, which is, it's not a gradual progression. Like that is
Mhm.
a leapfrog of progression. That is,
Yeah.
that's a lot. Most people are like, oh, I cut an hour, I cut 2 hours off. Like that would be big. But seven
Mhm.
hours is something when you look at that, um, it doesn't register, right? It's one of those things like, holy cow, like you're flying. So when you look at this, you already mentioned that you had coaches, you had, I think it was Matt Daniels, you mentioned,
Yeah,
and
Matt Daniels.
Matt
Yep.
Daniels and then Jeff Browning. You had those
Mhm.
two coaches. Is that what you attribute the change to in the time, as having coaches, or what else changed?
A lot of it, yeah, that's why I hired Matt. I actually reached out to David Roche, and Matt's one of his athletes, and so he turned me on to Matt, and, I just wanted to speed up the curve. I think he said 45 and clock's ticking, and you know how it takes a long time to learn things, so I'm like, I wanna speed the process up because I wanted to do better, and my goal from when I first started running AC was I wanna go sub 24 there, because if you can go sub 24 there, you're a pretty good runner. And so, yeah, it's a hard
Oh,
race,
so
man.
you then,
It's
so to
really
this
hard.
point, you're not a good runner, right?
Well, no, it was more just like people ask me all the time why I'm so consistent in my training, and it's the AC 100. I want to go sub 24 there, and I know it just takes forever to build up the body to do it. So your glutes and your quads, these big muscles, you can't build them up in a year. When I first signed up for AC, I'm like, here's where I am now, and here's where I'm going to be then. Like when I raced it in 2018. And I wasn't even close. And I think about 4 years later, I was like, I think I'm where I thought I would be in a year.
Wow.
It takes time to, so anyways, by getting a coach, for sure, you're doing speed. I never did speed work. I never was a athlete. Like, I mean, I was a football player and a baseball player, but never a track guy or a runner at all. I would never run. So yeah, at that point I had to learn all the speed work, doing strides and workouts, hill repeats, and so all that stuff was great. When I was with Matt for 3 years, and then I was dealing with a lot of overuse injuries, and so I wanted to get someone older, and so I was, everybody loves Jeff,
Hmm.
and so I just reached out to him, and we hit it off really good, and we've been buddies, and he's been a coach for 3 years, but yeah, so fast forward, it's just all the training and getting faster, not like I'm super fast, but I can hold a pace for a long time, and I know that. And when I'm in a race, I ran a 50K about 5 weeks out from Javelina, and and I was with some guys that didn't have much experience. They were with me around mile 15, and I was just I was like, "Let's see what you got." I was talking to them and telling them, they asked what I've done, and so I told them a couple races. And they're like, "Oh man, like Cocodona." So they know I'm not gonna fade, and so yeah, they faded. But that's all stuff you learn over time. You know what I mean? I mean, I like waiting at the finish and congratulating everybody, just hanging out with friends. And so, the couple of guys I'm talking about, the one guy was his first ultra, and he finished not too far behind me. So I said, "Dude, you're fast, man. Like that, this is an amazing start to your ultra career, young guy." But yeah, so it's just experience training, years of doing steady workout. I love running. I love training, so it's easy for me to get up and go run early. I love running with friends, so we go out in the mountains a lot. You know, usually like by Monday or Tuesday, I got a group message going with people to go run on the weekend because I do my workouts during the week, and so Saturday is more fun.
Mhm.
Just go out and hit the hills and spend some time out there.
So for those who are trying to figure out, like, how do they become, Chad Bruce, right? How do we do that? How much volume are you putting in a given year or even a given week? What's your weekly volume?
Um, Well, usually when I'm not hurt, about 2,800 miles a year is what I hit. I think I'm gonna hit 3,000 this year because I'm sure Cocodona. I never done 100-mile weeks ever. All my races were 80, 85 max.
Mhm,
My sweet spot's like 50 to 70.
mhm.
I like to go like 50, 60, 70, and then rest week 50, 60, 70, like 30, 40 miles, whatever. With Jeff, a rest week is like 50 during Cocodona training. He's like he's like, "We're not doing these easy recovery weeks." But, yeah, so that kind of training, like I said, 50 to 70 is the sweet spot that as far as, like, keeping my body healthy. I work a lot, I own a business, I got 4 kids, I got a real good marriage. My wife, we've been married over through 30 years, and, so I love being with my family, so I don't wanna get too crazy with it.
Mhm.
This morning I got up and ran early so I can get to work and then talk with you guys. But so I look at my schedule every week and just play with it to get it right. Jeff's real good about me being flexible. So, but I tend to get most of my stuff done. I just have to move it around or start early,
Mhm.
that type of thing. But I think loving running helps. Loving the process. I love training and preparing for races and putting something on the calendar that scares the hoot out of me. And it's fun. I mean, it keeps you living. I know it seems weird to like 50. I got friends that are like 50, like, aren't your knees gonna break but yeah, I had MRIs done on both knees because I ended up having when I got hurt in 2021 is when I got hurt. And it was we did rim to rim to rim, and a buddy of mine bonked pretty hard coming out of the canyon. So we finished like an hour after the town closed. So we got no food.
Oh,
And so
wow.
I woke up in the morning early and just so we could leave, and I passed out in the bathroom and just went straight down on my leg. And so I had a little bit of a knee, like a strain, like a meniscus issue going into that run. So it was real like a total tempered effort, just fun, take a lot of pictures and video. But when I went down in the bathroom, fast forward 3 or 4 months, I finally get an MRI and I had a severe bone bruise on the bottom of my femur. So it was right on the meniscus side, so it felt like meniscus, and we treated it like meniscus, my PT.
Mhm.
And so you'd start letting it heal and start feeling better, so then I would start ramping my miles back up, and then it would now knowing the bone would soften, you have to let those bone bruises heal or else you basically have to shave off it gets soft, so you have to let them harden up, but it's like more like an 8-week recovery. So I was going about 5 weeks and then ramping up. And so after we finally got an MRI and the doctor's like, "Where are you at right now?" And I'm like, "Oh, probably like, 50, 75%." And he's like, "Let's take a couple more weeks off now that
Yeah.
we know what it is." And so I took another week and then a full week of just elliptical, that kind of thing. No pounding it. And
But when you're over 50 like I am, we have brittle bones.
yeah. Oh yes. Well, you know what? That's what I was getting to. I forgot. So I had a double MRI, and the guy, because he knows I run 200-mile races and stuff, and he's like, "You're crazy." But then he did my knees and he goes, "Dude, your knees are so much better than everyone else your age because they're sedentary." And he goes, "Keep doing what you're doing." He said, "Your knees are a 1 out of 5 with 5 being the worst."
Mhm.
And most of the time, most people your age are like 3, and they're people that sit around and don't do a whole lot. So he said, "Stay active, hike, do whatever you can." and it's just going to help you out. So the whole thing about running hurting your knees is not true. Although we need to recover. I always take one day off a week. Um, I like 3 weeks on of build up and then 1 week of recovery just to let your body absorb that training. I think it's just smart. So.
Yeah. Any gear changes or nutrition changes? Well, we talked about nutrition already a little bit. You experimented a lot with that, but
Mhm.
between the AC 100 in 2018 and 2024, did you have any other gear changes or anything like that that kind of you think helped with this?
A little bit. So I was an ultra shoe wearer,
Mm.
and I was on their team for a few years. Great shoe, but once I developed that tendinopathy, I was still running with ultra, and I've gone to Speedland shoes. I tried everything. I have a wide foot, and so I can't get in a Hoka or nothing like that. But Speedlands are just wide enough. I cut on the inside. They have like a line that goes around the sole. You can cut it out. It's meant to be if you want a wider shoe. And so part of Cocodona, I attribute to Speedland shoes because my feet, every race I ran, 200s, I had Ultra, my feet were always killing me, and calves are tight, from the zero drop. And so with Speedland, I, I haven't had a problem, and I was able to run hard ever since I put their shoes in. And I had some Ultras out around Cocodona because I wasn't sure they were wide enough.
Mm-hmm.
I had some drop bags with Ultras in them just in case. And I was fine in my feet. So even AC 100, I'm running hard at the end. My feet don't hurt.
That's great.
Javelina, same. I changed my shoes in the 200s about every 50 miles, shoe and a sock change. But the hundreds, I just run straight through. So
Yeah.
it's just one
Ultras
pair.
now has it with other shoes. They don't have zero drop, all of them. Because
I was looking at them the other day. Yeah. They have some 4 millimeters.
I just bought a pair and had tried them out.
Yeah. So shoes have been huge for closing because when your feet don't hurt, you're going to be able to run faster. You're in for a long, what I mean? I'm not walking it in because my feet are killing me.
Okay. So Cocodona 250, AC 100, both incredible performances, right? And then the Javelina 100, though, is by far your best 100 race.
By far, yeah.
It's not even close, like night and day. And
Time wise, yeah.
yeah,
I think I ran as good a race at AC for me because I ran steady the whole time.
true.
Nutrition was good. There was a section at AC where I ran out of water for like 4 miles. And so I had to spend time at like a mile 68 station. I just drank like 2 liters, popped a couple salt pills, but I was pretty parched. It's so hot out there. Even overnight, it's just wicked. It was just humid and you feel like it just never cools off for you out there.
Yeah.
You're right. Javelina.
You can't compare one to the other because you're right. They are different in that way. So the AC 100 in 2024 is 100% a very strong performance. Javelina 100, the reason it impresses me so much is obviously your time was, I believe it's 19 hours and 28 minutes. But the most impressive part about that is just the sheer number of people who DNF'd that race because of the record heat that they had. Now, Roche was out there and set it on fire himself. Like to see what he did was just mind-boggling.
Amazing.
And then I looked down the list and I'm like, and there's Chad Bruce pulling in a sub 20 hours himself in the same race. How where did that come from for you?
Confidence, from Cocodona AC1, getting the electrolyte stuff. I don't even question what I'm doing, like electrolyte wise and feeding. I started before the Cocodona. I could pretty much eat anything. I was eating gels in between aid stations. I didn't have a problem. And normally I've been sick in a lot of races, like nauseous from not eating. Obviously I wasn't hydrating well enough and all that, but so yeah, the confidence with the feed, with the spring issue, then I go feed. So then I have all these gels in my arsenal. So I was solo out. I mean, I had friends, like we were in the same tent, but I was pretty much solo. So I just had a little bag of a couple precisions, couple trail butter, couple of goos. You just got to find the Roctane stuff goes down easy. Same thing with precision. It's just, you can just swallow it. Like there's just no after film. Like the goo non-Roctanes are kind of sticky and pasty, but the Roctanes, you can just swallow them down. Like it doesn't even, and they taste good. They taste pretty good. The precision has no taste. So that's a great gel for me. but they don't have any sodium. So you just have to know that. You gotta look at what's in them if you need to get 1,300 milligrams of sodium. No, when I looked, all the precision stuff has no sodium, which surprises me because that's what they're huge on, is getting your electrolytes right. But I just, in my mixes, I do my mix, my powder mixes by myself. I add a salt cap to each 2 scoops of fluid that I use. I forget what it is, how much sodium, but I'm guessing like 300 milligrams sodium. And I put an extra salt cap in that, and then I just use like little sandwich bags to tie them in knots, just so they're little bags in my pocket. So I would take everything I needed for that. Aid station. So, here's something else. So Jeff, back at the San Diego 100, that was a big breakthrough race for me in like 2023. I told Jeff, I'm not elite, but I want you to train me like I'm elite. Like, talk to me mentally. It's like, I want to get to be the best runner I can be. And so he's like, okay, so let's do a deep dive into all your hundreds. Like, how much downtime? I was over 2 hours in every 100-mile race that I'd run up to that point. So he's like, if you're crewed, you got 20 minutes. If you're solo, you got 45
Wait, wait,
minutes.
wait. I'm
And I'm
sorry.
like, what?
Pause for a minute.
Yeah.
When you say
Uh,
downtime for 2 hours, what did you mean?
just your stop time, like
Stop
from
time.
moving time to stop time. Yeah, aid station stops. Yeah, if you're on Strava, as long as you don't stop your watch, you can get the moving time with
Mhm.
the elapsed time.
Yeah.
And every one of them was over 2 hours. Even my javelina 2020 was my fastest 100. To that point, it was 23:28 or something like
Mhm.
that. Um, so yeah, so that was like a big mental shift. I was like, whoa, like what? Like, I was thinking, because he asked me what my opinion was, and I said, I think I can get it to like an hour 15. That'd be sweet. And he's like, no, you got 45 minutes. I'm like, what? But at San Diego, I almost did it. I was just, I can't remember if I was right around an hour. But it changed my mind, right? Like, instead of thinking an hour 15, I'm thinking 45. And I talked to a couple other elite runners and I asked them what their opinion was. And they said the same thing: 20 minutes or less solo, 45 minutes or less if you're, I'm sorry, solo, 45 minutes or less. If you're crewed, 20 minutes or less.
Mm.
And the race director of San Diego, she was co-RD, Angela Chartel. She told me that her best performance, I think it was like 8 minutes in 100 of downtime.
Wow.
I just want to make sure that our listeners know that it's not 20 minutes per stop, 20 minutes and 45 minutes per stop at the aid station. That is cumulative across the entire race, where if you're crewed, you get 20 minutes. And if you're uncrewed, you get 45 minutes for the entire thing in terms of downtime.
Yeah.
Everything. So that was a big shift for me. Just that alone cuts time off. So I'm not sure what I was at AC, but it was probably around an hour. I know I waited at I had a couple slower aid stations, but most of them, like out from the loop, I just bump and run. I have my powder in my bottles ready before I get to the aid station. So like, as soon as I see the aid station or I know it's coming, I drink what's in my bottles and I dump the powder in it, and I come in and give it to them, fill it up. While they're filling up my bottle, I grab a couple things to eat or whatever, and I just walk.
Mhm.
So even if you're at San Diego 100, when I knew it was working, was about mile 60, because that's about the time you start slowing down and sitting down. I ran to an aid station with a guy, and he was like going to park it, and I just grabbed, I canted my bottles, I grabbed 4 avocado wraps, and I just walked, and I'm gonna eat my dinner.
Yeah.
And so I walked a 14-minute mile. So instead of having a 20-minute mile or whatever, if I sat down for a minute, I just ate my lunch and I just walked into as the evening was coming on. And that's when I was like, it's working. Like, I'm doing it. Like, because you can do it for 50 miles easy,
Mhm.
like in a 50 mile, my downtime is like 6 minutes, maybe 5 minutes, probably better than that. At Avalon, I'm just bump and run every time. But once you get into 100, that 60 to 80 miles, which you just need to know too, is like the bulk of a marathon is like 18 to 20 to 21, because you got a long way to go and you're hurting. But in 100, it's like 60 to 80. And I honestly think it's just people lose hope, because you hurt so much at mile 60. You're like, I got 40 miles. It's like,
Right.
because how many people drop at mile 60 to 70 in 100? And I honestly think they just lose hope,
Mhm.
because once you get to 995, what happens? You're running it in, man. You're like, woo, give me that buckle. So I really try to keep the faith during that time, because I know that that's when it hurts. But I know around mile, 80, you're gonna start smelling the barn and it's gonna get better. So you kind of just keep trucking. So yeah, so at Javelina, Yeah, I was just, I was efficient at the aid stations. The bi- this drives me crazy is in every hot race I run, I have an ice hat, not sponsored. They have like a little Velcro. Like I got like the hood, what do they call those? Bucket hats.
Yeah.
So it's probably ugly. It's like a sun brim hat, you know what I mean? But it's on the inside, it's got a little pouch and it's got a thing of Velcro. And I hand them at the aid station my ice bandana, and they fill that up. I have the ice hat, and they fill that up, and I put it on. And keeping your brain cool is like half the battle, I think. I've run by so many great runners on hot days because they don't even have an ice bandana
Mhm.
on, and I'm like, this is the only difference between me and you. And you see guys sitting in the shade, like they're dying, and it's because I got ice on my head and they don't have ice at all, or just the bandana. But as soon as, I mean, to me, when your brain starts getting overheated, like I've done that in a race, and they give you an ice bag to put on your head.
Yeah.
So it's like, put ice on your head. That way because your brain's telling your stomach, like, you got problems. You know what I mean? Like, we need to shut this down. And so then your stomach goes south, and if you cool off, if you stay cool, you don't have problems. But it just drives me crazy seeing hot races, because to me, the word's out on like the ice bandana, the arm sleeves. It's like, if it's hot, take them. Like, even if you're racing at altitude, I raced up in Big Bear a couple years ago, Holcomb Creek, or Holcomb Valley, 35 mile. And I got probably top 10. And I'm passing super fast runners, and they're just dying in the heat but it's up there, it's 75, but you're at altitude, you're
Mhm.
closer to the sun. It's kind of like being at the beach, when it's 75, you're smoking hot. So I brought my ice bandana, and they had ice at the aid station. So I'm running by these guys feeling great, and they're suffering in the heat. And so it's really frustrating because a lot of great runners just don't prepare. It's like, put ice on your head. I had ice on my sleeves. I let them fill my ice bandana and my hat up. I'm grabbing food. I put everything on. I open my arm sleeves. They dump ice in. I'm gone, and I'm wet until the next aid station. Even the longest stretch is from the first aid station to Jackass Junction, and I was wet the whole time. I never was not wet. And Dave was doing the same thing, filling his ice. He was putting ice in his bucket hat and putting it on, and so he's staying cool. So that's huge. The other thing is, I went to doing gels about every 30, 35 minutes.
Yeah.
And so you think like, "Oh, I'm gonna get sick of this." But when I ran Angeles Crest, I was pounding gels the whole race, and I felt great. And I ate a piece of pizza at one aid station. They didn't uh, most of the time, like in 200s, man, I want burgers and breakfast burritos. But in 100, you're running most of the hundreds, so you can't really do that. But yeah, I haven't had a problem with gels, especially these non-tasting gels like Precision and stuff. You can just get them down, and so I think that's huge too, just getting a lot more, carbohydrates.
Yeah, the last time I did the Black Canyon, down here outside of San Diego, it was toasty, and the ice hat, putting ice over your head, keep everything really cool in between aid stations is amazing. I looked like I was came out of a pool after I went out of every aid station, and just that evaporative effect that it does for the rest of the race, it's great. And it's really low humidity here, so it dries pretty quickly, which stops you from chafing and everything.
Yeah.
So, in training, do you do ice? Do you wear an ice bandana and stuff during training as well?
No.
You don't. Would
I run a race. That's why I like to run a race. So before Javelina, I ran what's called the Bandit 50K out here, and it was a really hot day in Simi Valley, which is a hot area. It had more gain. It was a lot of gain. But I wanted to run that race. So that was ice bandana. I don't think I went with ice hat that day, but I haven't had a problem. I know you like to race and train, but I do a lot of sauna. I poor man's sauna. I bought for Western States in 2022. I bought one of those cheap saunas off Amazon for like $200. It's like a fridge you sit in.
Same thing's right behind me. I got one of those too. Works perfectly. Use it for cocodona.
It gets up to like, I don't know, 140 degrees, but I'm like dying in that thing. Yeah. So I go in there. I use it quite a bit throughout the year. But of course, before a race, you have that 2-week protocol you do. But yeah, so $200, I can sit in it whenever I want. It's in my garage. I run in the heat as much as I can. I don't mind. I'm, to be honest, when you're heat trained, you don't even really feel it
Yeah.
too much. You know what I mean? It's like, you're pretty good. But I do, when you hit streams and things like that, I definitely dip my hat. And in training, it's like all these little oases you come across, like, oh my gosh, water, perfect. So you suffer a little more in training than you will in a race, but that's okay.
I don't use the ice bandana when I train either, but I use it as a race, and man, it saves your race a lot because it keeps your body cooler. And then when you're heat trained, like I'll go out and do a run and then come sit in the sauna after I've eaten a big breakfast. And that helps your gut learn how to digest when it's hot. And then you can keep moving and stay hydrated while you're hot. I think that helps out a lot, especially in the drier climates.
So yeah, at javelina, besides just normal pain, from running that far, um, I didn't, I didn't have any issues, to be honest with you. I made it through the heat of the day, doing really well. I had Jeff Browning paced me to lap 4. So lap 3, I'm like, I got to stay strong through this because, get to Jeff, just get to Jeff. And so he paced me lap 4, which is amazing, right? I mean, I mean, I still pinch myself because I'm friends with him and I know how cool it is. When I'm lap 5, I passed a few guys and they're like, dude, like that was Jeff Browning we were pacing. And I'm like, I know. So like, it's pretty cool.
Is
Like
my
running
friend.
like, yeah, I know. Right. I mean, even just thinking back to the Cocodina training with those guys in Arlen, I mean, I'm totally fanboy. Like, I
Right.
can't believe I'm running with these guys, but when you do that, it builds your confidence. I'm comfortable around whoever now, because I think everybody can be intimidated by
Sure.
good runners and things like that. But I run with some fast guys and friends with a few really good athletes like that, and they're all just they're all just like us. They're trying to improve and get better, and what I mean. So whether you're slow, I never like on Strava. I never say slow. I never because my easy pace might be someone might not even be able to run that, and you see fast guys, right? Like Walmsley and Zach Miller's Strava, and you just shake your head at what these guys can do. But yeah, to me, nothing's slow, and when I go out with friends, I don't care. We'll just run whatever pace, and you know what I mean? It's like whatever. Well, yeah, I don't like having an ego like that, and I don't want someone to make feel bad if I'm like, oh, I ran slow miles today, and then someone's like, dude, like I wish I could run fast like you're slow. You make people feel bad, so it's like I just think that just run your pace and try and get faster for what you can do. Strides are huge. When I was out there, because I like to hike run, so I like mountain stuff more than I like
Mm.
javelina. So I wasn't sure I could do that. So when I was running like the second lap, I got sick and threw up on the third lap in 2020. And so this time I felt strong the whole time. I was running up the hills easily and I did slow down, but I still my average pace I think was 11:41. So you're pretty much running the whole time. And the last with Jeff, he knew I was trying to break 20, and then we had it down to where I knew like I could break 19:30. And so when we got done, he just told me that he goes, go get it, go like with that dig in deep, and,
Mhm.
and and finish hard. And I had to run 10-minute miles the last 2 miles. My math's terrible, especially in a 100-mile race. So I knew I had to run something in the tens to break 19:30. And so yeah, I got in at 19:28, but pretty solid. My goal is to go sub 4 hours on every lap,
Yeah.
and I was 3:40 on the first. The next 2 I was pretty similar, below 4, and the last 2 were just right at or a little above 4. So I kept it pretty steady the whole time. Yeah, and just like that, it's another confidence booster because now I know I can run 11-minute pace for 100 miles. You know what I mean? So it's like, but it's all these things. You have little breakthroughs, and you finish this race an hour long, and then you run a little faster here and keep training. But it encourages the training too because it's working. And I think I have friends that are like in their 60s and they're super fast, still crushing it, and so I feel like I'm still got a long way to go. I feel stronger now than I ever have.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I don't look at 50 like, oh man. I mean, when I turned 50, I became a grandpa like shortly after. I'm like, dang man, life's catching up fast. So
Hey,
like,
man,
because
same.
I know it's just a number, right? 50, but I was like, dang man, I'm 50 now. And then all of a sudden my daughter's like, oh, daddy, I'm pregnant. I'm like, oh my gosh, are
Like,
you
really
serious?
stop, right?
I know. Couldn't you wait
Same.
to let me ease into this whole 50 thing?
Yeah.
But now I'm stoked. I'm stoked to run and try and stay as fit as I can. I try to help people too that aren't runners, like because a lot of it's diet. I'm definitely more of a like Jeff talks about his OFM diet, more high fat, low carb. But so I've been doing that since like 2016, 2017.
Yeah.
The only thing is I eat vegetables, but I don't like to eat simple carbs, um, chips and salsa, whatever, just manufactured stuff. So I try to just eat as clean as I can. Definitely not perfect. If I want to eat something, I eat it, but pizza or whatever. But overall, though, I don't. It's I just want to be as good as I can get, and so every little thing counts. So if I can eat healthy, if I can watch the quantities, if I like at Cocodona, I focused on losing weight, dropping a few pounds. I've never ran in the 170s. I'm 6 foot, almost 6'4", and so I usually my race weight would be like 185. But I thought, man, I wonder if I can, tighten up my diet a little bit and just get rid of some body fat. And I started Cocodona probably like 178, something like that. And it's
Dang.
amazing, 7 pounds. I can run uphill so much easier, and I feel so much healthier. So now I'm trying to stick it in the 170s, and not that I'm like obsessing over my weight or anything like that, but it's just like if I can lose a pack, that means because Cocodona, I'm like dropping my pack weight, so now I'm running without a pack with a pack. So,
You're killing
but
it,
I
man.
mean,
I am 6'5", 6'4", depending on the day, right? But
mhm.
I am 200 pounds. Holy cow, man! Like,
Yeah. So if you just tighten up, I mean, to be honest, a lot of people, it's just inflammation.
yeah,
I
yeah.
don't know about you, but after a race, I did it with my daughters just to prove a point with them. We went out because I raced, especially before I raced a lot, like once a month, almost
Mhm.
50Ks and you name it. I was just signing up for it without even looking at the calendar. And so I took him to a restaurant and I said, "Watch my calves." Like it was after a race, post race on a Sunday. So we went out after church and had a nacho, like a gnarly nacho at Cheesecake Factory. And then we go walk the mall, and I'm like, I showed him my calves before that, and then afterwards they're just balloons. You can't even see any
Yeah.
definition. And then the next time I raced, we went out and I had my normal salad with some chicken or avocado and all that, and nothing, and so it
It's
kinda
crazy.
no, I don't force them to eat anything. We eat pretty healthy as a family, generally speaking, but, yeah, just inflammation, especially with old people, they say, "Oh, my knees are bad," and it's just like piston clearance,
Mhm.
in your legs, and so if you're inflamed at all, it's just gonna be
Yeah.
pain, so if you can just watch your diet, avoid the processed stuff, you're just gonna feel better. So I try to at least because people just think they can't do anything. Like, "You're crazy,
Mhm.
I could never do that." And it's like, you could totally do that. Because I was a golfer that weighed like 220 pounds or so, and I was kinda going down that route. I bought an elliptical back then just because I didn't wanna get too fat. I went from working out in the field, in my business to running it. So I went to the office, and most of my friends that had office jobs were overweight. So
Yeah.
I bought an elliptical because I'm like, every time I went golfing, I walked, but I still was pudgy. I mean, if you saw pictures, I was definitely had a golfer's body, and I hated running too. So it's like my cousin, he dropped a ton of weight. He was like probably close to 300 pounds, and he's now a triathlete and Ironman and
It's
all that.
impressive,
And I
man.
was all yeah, I was always like, "Man, what are you running for?" I said, "That's because that's what we did for punishment, like baseball." That was, so you have like this negative connotation to it. But I tell everybody, it's like I can give you a half-mile hike up on the Angeles Crest Highway, and it's going to be one of the most beautiful views you'll ever see. And it's like, just do something, like try to eat healthy. I mean, I'm not going to preach to everybody, but it's like if you want to feel better, it's like do something to feel better. And
Agreed.
there's ways to do it because I've done it.
Yeah.
I mean, not that I'm like all knowing, but it's like I like to work out. I'm kind of fighting for that 1% and everything. I want to eat as healthy as I can. I want to train. I want to sleep. I try to maximize sleep, like put the phone away. Because you know how it is. You can sit
Yeah.
watching reels on
All day.
Instagram for, oh, dude, and like Steve Harvey stuff or whatever. It makes me crack up.
Don't yeah,
But
but don't
yeah.
apologize for pursuing getting in like, improving yourself, like, that's all you're doing,
Mhm.
like, you're continuing to do that, and there's nothing to
Yeah.
apologize for, and a lot of people are looking how to get better at whatever skill or whatever craft that they wanna pursue and stuff, and obviously, we're running towards
Mhm.
the end of a calendar year here, and everyone's gonna start making the resolutions, and the idea of just saying, "I'm going to get 1% better," is a
Mhm.
huge improvement for a lot of people. They could just kind
Yeah.
of kind of start looking at it that way, so don't ever apologize when you're saying, that this is what I do, and I know I'm not an expert in or whatever. No, this is what you
Mhm.
are doing, and this has created results in you that are unquestionable, that you can see
Mhm.
kind of the progress you made. So it is anecdotal because it's an N of one of you, but it is actually your story. And that's what I think many people who are listening can pull something from it. Like, I could do that, or I could do this. Like, I may not be able to do the strength and mobility for the 3 days a week, but I can maybe drink some electrolytes every day. Like,
Mhm.
I can start somewhere getting a change in how I feel and things that can improve my
Yeah.
overall fitness. And so,
Mhm.
it's full of information I think that you've got here. Um, Upcoming in 2025, you have got the Monster 300, the Angeles Crest 100, the Angeles Crest 100, and the Kodiak 100. You
Mhm.
also signed up according to Ultra Sign Up for the Triple Crown of 200s, the Bigfoot 200, Tahoe 200, and Moab 240. And from what I understand, you may defer those to 2026 if you get into hard rock and or Western states. What are you doing in 2025?
Well, the plan right now, if I don't get into hard rock or Western, which I've already done Western, so I've only got 4 tickets. Hard rock, I've been in the lottery for I think 5 years. But the plan is to do. Let's see, my plan was to do Monster and then the Triple Crown in 1 year. And but then I ran Western States, or then I ran Angeles Crest, and my goal is to go sub 24. And after I ran, I'm like, I gotta do it again. Like I'm right there. I know I can do it now. I didn't before. I would think like, yeah, I'm going for sub 24, but I didn't believe I could do it. Not at all. I I would tell myself I could, but
Yeah.
my best time there was 28:08. Yeah, so I knew this year was a big year. I knew I had a lot of experience and a lot of training, and I thought a better runner. I wasn't sure how good I could do, but when I got the second sunrise buckle for sub 25, I'm like, I can totally break
Hmm.
24 at this race, and so my plan right now is to run Monster 300 and then Angeles Crest and then Kodiak uh, only, and then defer the Triple Crown to the next year. But, I'm leaving it there because AC, the first, 13 miles caught fire
Yeah.
after our race and burned up. So, so I'm not sure with forest closures and stuff, but they seem confident that they're still, they haven't paused anything. So I'm kinda I have quite a while before I have to defer the Triple Crown. So I'm kinda leaving it there just to wait till AC and see how the lotteries work out. 'Cause, if I get into Hard Rock, I gotta go there. So but, yeah, so that's the plan.
I got one ticket for Hard Rock, so we'll see how that goes.
Like, what's
It's
that?
He said he's got one ticket for hard rock. That's
Hey,
awesome.
it
I
only takes one.
I mean,
You never know.
I only have 16 tickets for Western, so maybe I'll come out and see y'all on the West Coast this year. But odds are I won't get picked either. So, but if I do, I got pacers on the West Coast that can yell at me the entire time when I'm going too slow.
Yeah.
Steve, I would like to move to Coach's Corner unless you've got something else you want to ask about.
I don't have anything else to ask, but I do have one takeaway for myself is try to lose weight before Cocodona and not gain weight. Because I tried to gain weight a little bit before Cocodona to fight off my fat reserves, to eat off my fat reserves later on in the race. But I guess I should go in skinnier a little bit.
Yeah. It'll help you run uphill faster. I mean, dude, the first day I felt so amazing. I couldn't when I got to it was funny when we were right behind Ashley Paulson at right before Lane Mountain, up on top. And I'm running with this guy and we're just chatting and what races have you done? Oh, I did Bigfoot and oh yeah, me too. I'm like, oh, how'd you do? Because it was his first 200 and he's like, oh, I set the course record and one. And I was like, holy crap! Like, who am I with? I got Ashley ahead of me and I'm with the Bigfoot winner from like the year before or maybe 2 years before. But yeah, I was in, dude, I'm telling you, and I was just, I mean, obviously I knew I was running good. I felt great. But I was still like, whoa, like pinch me. Like maybe I'm going too fast. I feel like I'm doing okay. But I'm like, dang, I wasn't expecting to be with the people I was with for sure.
No pressure.
But just living the dream, man. I'm just one, I'm just whatever, just one of the guys, and I'm running with people that I only dream about running with.
That's awesome. So, you said you listened to some of our episodes before that we've already put on, so you know that we do
Mhm.
in each of our episodes at the end, we do this segment, if you will, that we call Coach's Corner, which is just an opportunity that we take to allow listeners of the show to send us questions that they have. That could be about any topic when it comes to their own training, about ultras themselves, or it could be gear or nutrition, whatever it is that comes to mind. They pass along to us either through Instagram, through text, through friends, whatever it is. And then we pick one and we choose to read it on the show. And then I will answer it, Steve will answer it, and then we invite our guest to answer it as well. So you get to help be one of our expert responders here today. So,
All
and
right.
with the things you've done, you probably are going to have the best answer anyway. So I'm looking forward to it. So I'll go ahead and read the question. It comes from Deacon, who sent this to us through Instagram. And he said, I'm returning from an injury, and anything over 6 to 7 miles feels long. I want to start increasing my volume, but can't mentally get past the distance barrier at the moment. Is it a good idea to break up a longer run into 2 runs in the same day, morning and evening? Now, I'm just going to be mean to Deacon, and I don't mind being the one. Deacon, stop whining. So I can say that because actually I'm friends with Deacon. I do know who Deacon is. He has run a
That's good.
50K. He has struggled for. I can say that, and he's probably laughing. He's like, "God dang it! I knew he was going to say that about me." Yeah, I will tell you straight up, stop whining, and that's why he sent it, through our Instagram and didn't reach out to me and ask me specifically because he knew that's what I would tell him. But now I'll tell him and the rest of the world, don't whine just because it's 6 to 7 miles and mentally you don't like doing it. Now, I have a better answer than that, but I will pause. Steve, response rather.
I have two suggestions. One is I'm kind of on the same lines as you, where I really wouldn't break it up. I wouldn't start breaking up longer runs until they're at like the 15 to 20 mile mark around there, and then you can start breaking them up into morning and night into like a five or a 5 and a 10 or a 7 and 8 or a 10 and a 10, things like that. And that's kind of more my tactical answer. My philosophic or like stoicism answer is sometimes the obstacle is the way, man. You got to go out there. And sometimes if it's that 6 miles, the obstacle, you got to go hit that 6 miles. 7 miles, the obstacle, go hit that 7 miles. I know it kind of sucks, but that's kind of what you have to do.
Yeah. So I'm going to add another answer to it. So the idea of getting past mentally the distance barrier, to me, I would say this to anybody, regardless if it's 6 miles, 7 miles, 10 miles, 20 miles, whatever that is, whatever that mental stumbling block is, like that distance seems like too much at this point. That's what ultras are. Like ultras are a mental game. And we have to understand that when we put ourselves in this sport, that we're going to have to do distances that are uncomfortable at times, and we're going to have to push through that mental barrier. And so training ourselves to have that right mindset to go further is important because in a 100-mile race or a 50-mile race, whatever that distance is that you're doing, you're going to reach a point where mentally you don't want to do it or you don't feel like you can do it. And so when you begin to do this and go through those hard training sessions or those hard blocks where you're pushing yourself a little bit further than you've done in the past, you can begin to look back on those wins and kind of put that in your tool belt of success, if you will, of how you can move forward. So that's my take on that answer. Sorry, Deacon. Chad, any thoughts for Deacon?
I just think coming off injury, I know for me, I just want to go out and do what I love. So I love running with friends, and the miles go by so fast. So I don't know if you got some hills or trails you like, or a running group you like. I would just go run with them. Do something that fires you up because obviously motivation is a little bit of a factor here.
Hmm.
But that's what I like to do when I'm coming off injury. You're not going to dig into speed work or anything like that right away. I don't know how long the injury's been, but if he's just in a funk, then I'm just gonna do what I wanna do. I'm gonna go call a friend and go for a hike or get lost in the mountains because that's what I like to do. I love getting out with friends and chatting, and you know how it is, man. The miles just click by, you're on a 15-mile run. Next thing you know, you're at 8 miles. Like, dang it, man. It's like, oh, it's like this is almost gonna end. I want to keep it going. So, I mean, because that's gonna fire you up for the training and then maybe a race or something like that in the future. But it is tough coming back from injury.
It
I
is.
know when I had my bone bruise, I was basically running injured for 4 months. Then I took some time off to get over it. And yeah, you lose some fitness and things hurt a little bit, but it comes back pretty quick. I mean, you have a base of running. If you've done an ultra, you have a fairly good base, so it comes back. It's just you got to fight through like that month to like start feeling it again. Every run kind of feels like dog junk, but that's what I would say.
Yeah, I think
Go do something you love.
Yeah, I think it's why runners we tend to struggle when we're injured because we're terrified that we're going to lose all of our fitness, right? And what you're saying is
Mhm,
true because we know that this rebuilding, depending on how long we're away from it, can be difficult and challenging because of having to
mhm.
start all over, if you will. And so you're right. In that regard, it's a bit of a fear for some folks too when they are injured and they'll push themselves as well too fast to avoid that happening. But great
Mhm.
answers, everybody. Deacon, I love you, and so it's all good. I promise. And but yeah, so Chad, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. For those who've listened to the show and have connected with what you're talking about, is there any way, or what is the best way rather, for them to keep up with you? Is it through Instagram, through your account there?
Yeah, I post some, but message. I'm on Messenger. I get or the Instagram messages and the Strava mess. I'm on Strava. That's I do so Strava messages is on for me as well. But I do get some questions and things like that. So yeah, you can reach out if you want for
All
sure.
right. So reach out to Chad through Strava or Instagram. And for everybody listening, thank you so much for joining us today. If you've got questions for Coach's Corner, please send those in through our Instagram account or email or however you want to contact us. Definitely let us know some questions you have, and we will promise to love you like we do Deacon and not hurt your feelings or anything as much as we possibly can. We won't. We definitely. But do
Yeah.
us a favor, like, subscribe, tell your friends, and thank you so much for joining us. And again, Chad, thank you for being a part of the show with us today. We really appreciate you and are super impressed with everything you've done, and look forward to kind of seeing how 2025 continues to build, because you're not getting, slower. You're just getting faster. You're not getting older. You're just getting wiser. Like, you are just showing us what can be done. And so thank you for taking the time, and thank your family for sacrificing the evening with us.
Oh, no problem.
Go,
Yeah, thanks guys. It was great.
go eat a hamburger.
Yeah, no kidding.
Jokes, don't eat that. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, and have a good night.
Thank you.